Ed Baker, United States Army Air Corps, World War II. Ed's one of my World War II airmen. I interviewed him in New Philadelphia, Ohio. It was November the 12th, 2008, almost 15 years ago. He went into the military, drafted in September of 1942, and he went in and became a gunner on a B-17, the Silver Dollar, the Flying Fortress. Went to gunnery school in Las Vegas, Nevada. Found himself in World War II with the 8th Air Force 388th Bomb Group as a waist gunner and then a top turret gunner. Ed was in his middle to late 80s when I interviewed him, and just really remembered a lot. And I love these stories of World War II, the airmen. Unfortunately, in France in 1943, September 43, Ed was shot down, became a prisoner of war. 20 months in Austria, Stalag 17B, was liberated in May of 1945. So, decorated fella from World War II. I miss him. He passed away in 2015 at the age of 95, and just a great story. Michael Negley, I want to thank you for sponsoring Ed's story. Thank you for supporting my work and your love for our country and our veterans, and thank you for stepping forward and just helping me to share Ed's story with the world. Michael, thank you very much. Folks, if you'd like to sponsor a story, I've redesigned my sponsor page. There's information in the video description below this video. On my website, click on Sponsor a Veteran. You'll see pictures of my veterans, include their name in the sponsorship. I'll do the rest. Take a look at the page. It looks really good. I'm adding more stories there. If you'd like to donate to my work, or I would encourage you to donate to my work, there's information in the comment section of every video of mine, and I would appreciate it. Voices of History Radio is going strong 24 hours a day. I invite you to listen to that. It's a great supplement to this channel, and it's great for our students to have living history in the palm of their hands. They can download the apps for free on either app store. All right, folks, thank you for watching and listening. We're getting into the fall season now. It's turned fall here in western Colorado. And I'm off to Texas this weekend, coming weekend. I'm going to interview a Korean War veteran whose family has contacted me. He's 90 years old. He wants to be interviewed before he passes away. He's got cancer. So I'll be flying down there. Haven't flown in 4 years, so I might say a prayer for me as I leave on Friday, November 3rd, returning November 5th. So God bless you. Thank you for watching and listening and subscribing to this channel. Enjoy Ed's story.
Old.
Did you ever think you'd be 89 years old?
No, I never thought that.
Never, huh? You look good.
I can't complain. I feel good, and I think my mind's pretty good.
What year did you go into the military?
I went in 1942.
And were you drafted?
I was a draftee. I was a farmer and drafted into the military service.
Where did you go to your basic training?
I went to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri for the basic training.
What was your MOS, your job in the military? What did you do?
I ended up being a gunner on a B-17, the Silver Dollar.
So you were in the Army Air Corps, Air Force? Or?
No, it was the Army Air Corps at that time.
Okay.
Didn't change it to the Air Force till a couple of years after that, or after the war. They named.
Do you remember the Pearl Harbor attack, where you were and how you heard the news about that?
Yeah, I was at the little town of Freeport having my car worked on when somebody came in screaming that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. And being a 21-year-old farm boy, I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was really. But that was a tragic day, and everybody had their radios on listening to that. And the president would come on that evening, and then the next day, of course, the radio was the communication at that time.
Do you remember after that attack, did you feel like you wanted to get into the military and serve and all that?
Yes, of course, that's the time we had just registered for the draft, and some of my friends had been drafted, but I hadn't thought about going in the service. But from then on, my dad and I talked about it, and I said, well, I'm not going to get an exemption. Some of the boys were getting exemption because they were farmers, but I didn't want one.
So you went in 42, so.
Yeah, I went in September of 42.
Where did you serve overseas?
I was in England.
Did you go over in 42?
No, I went to Armory School in Denver, Colorado first, and then went to Las Vegas, Nevada for gunnery training. And that was a volunteer. You had to volunteer, and I'd tried to get into gunnery school before that, but I was too big. But then they kept raising the size, your weight and your height to be a gunner, because they needed gunners. And so I went to gunnery school in Las Vegas.
Were you full of piss and vinegar, ready to go?
Oh yes, we thought we was it. And then especially when we was assigned to B-17, we thought that was ultimate, because that was known as the Flying Fortress, and we thought that was the ultimate.
So that was before the B-24 and the B-29s?
Well, the B-24 was existent, but they didn't have the ball-turret gunner, and they'd taken them to England, and they weren't able to go against the Luftwaffe at the time, because the Luftwaffe would come right up underneath them. There was no ball-turret gunner there, and so they were very vulnerable to the German Air Force, for that matter.
You said tail gunner or turret gunner?
I was a waist gunner to begin with, and our engineer, top turret gunner, after one of the raids, he says, I'm giving this up. And the pilot wanted one of the crew members to be the top turret gunner and help him out when they landed and takeoffs. And so I went up to the top turret gunner, and I was the top turret gunner the last two raids I was on.
And you eventually were shot down?
I was shot down on September the 6th, 1943, over France. We'd been to Stuttgart, Germany that day.
Can you tell me about the crash? Just walk me through what happened, where you were, what happened when you were hit, and then did you bail out or did you actually hit the ground?
As I remember it, we hit the target, all 21 points. Our group had 21 points, and we were headed home, back to England, and the pilot come on the intercom and says, oh, look out, boys, look at the airplanes. All you can see is B-17s. And we looked out. Of course, I'd been looking out, seeing them, and you must have been able to see 25 or 30, because it was maybe as high as 50, you could see. He says, we're only 6 minutes from P-47s. We're going to be home safe again today. And before he got off the intercom, the bombardier come on and says, look out, here they come. And you look to right at the front of the airplane and hear the Focke-Wulfs come. And as I remember, the fight didn't last too long. I got a couple bursts off, but they were coming at you at better than 300 miles, and we were about 400 miles an hour, and we were traveling at 300. And the fight only lasted a few minutes, and the co-pilot grabbed me by the leg and says, come on, and wave, go. And before I got out of the turret, he was out of the airplane, gone. And I grabbed the pilot's arm when I got out of the turret, and he just gave me the motion to go. And I'd always promised the other men in the back of the airplane that I would come back through the bomb bay and notify them if we got shot down. Because back in the back of your mind, you realized after losing points every raid you went out on that your day would come, but we thought we would be the crew that would make the 25 missions. But I went back and got the radio man, got the boy out of the ball turret, the waist gunners and the tail gunner, and we bailed out the back end of the plane. Our crew was very fortunate. We didn't lose anybody. And the battle didn't last long, but we didn't lose anybody from our crew. We all bailed out successfully.
Had you ever jumped out of a plane before?
No, the only thing they ever told us is count to 10 and pull the ripcord in. We never had any training. Only get your chute on and go.
But what kind of planes were shooting at you, did you say?
Focke-Wulf's 190s was the plane that was shooting at us.
So they're shooting machine gun bullets, or what are they
Well,
shooting?
they had cannons, not machine guns, on the Focke-Wulf.
You were hit, and you knew you were hit.
Yeah, we were hit. The pilot had no control over the plane when I got to communicate with him, when he told me to give me the motion to go.
Was there fear at that point, or was it later?
I don't remember any fear. You were emotionally involved in what in your mind you'd decided you would do when the time come. And I don't remember any fear at the time. And once your chute opened, there was no sensation of falling until you hit the clouds, as I remembered. You were floating. I had a small chute, a smaller chute. Mine was a chest pack, and it was smaller than the rest of them.
So you're jumping out at night or during the day?
No, we were, the United States Air Force thought they could fly at daytime. The English flew at night, and we were flying daytime. It was about 12 o'clock. We'd taken off that morning someplace around 7 or 8 o'clock.
What altitude were you at, you think?
Approximately 20 to 22,000 feet, as I remember.
How did you breathe?
Well, you can live so long up there, of course you'll pass out, but of course when you're flying you have oxygen on all the time. And once you left the turret you didn't have oxygen, but you were conscious.
Was it cold?
Yeah, it was 20 to 30 below zero, but you had heated suits on. So you weren't cold when you were flying, even though the waist gunners especially were right out at the air because they had the window open at the waist.
So you jump out of this plane with your buddies,
Yeah.
And eventually you land on the ground?
Land on the ground, and I broke my foot when I landed, because as I remembered, there was a hole or two in the chute. I don't know where them holes come from, but they were there, and I landed pretty hard, and I was a little bit average in weight for a small chute as I had on, and but I landed safely. And the French come out, was over France when we was shot down, headed back to England. And the Frenchman brought me bread and wine out to eat. He didn't bring me no water because evidently the water in that area wasn't fit to drink. But I wasn't able to walk after my foot swelled up quite a bit after I landed.
Did all of the crew gather together on the ground?
No, I didn't see any of the crew till the next day.
Wow.
When the next, of course, this was sometime after dinner, and I stayed in the vineyard that night. This Frenchman kept motion when he'd come out and talk to me, but he couldn't stay with you. If he would have been caught with me by the Germans, he would have been considered a spy and killed. Even the German guard would have had the right to kill him there. But he would come out and communicate with me and point to a house half a mile or so away, but I wasn't able to, and so I stayed in the vineyard that night. And the next morning, when I woke up, you looked out over the area there, and there was Germans marching up and down out in the field but I hadn't seen no Americans or German because there was German planes shot down as well as Americans. Our group that day lost 11 planes in that area.
So did you see your plane crash to the ground when you?
No, I'd never seen the plane after I left. Of course, the plane was still moving ahead, but the next day after the German picked me up, we both got on the back end of it. We went to the road and we both got on the back end of a truck that went by. He just stopped the truck and we crawled up on it. And as we went to the small town there, we went by 3 B-17s and a couple of Focke-Wulfs on the ground that you could see, and the German kept pointing out, and he was cursing the Americans there as we went across to the small town we went to.
So were you already captured at this point?
Then I'd been captured the next morning.
So what'd they do, walk up to you and say?
Well, he motioned, he seen me in the vineyard, and he motioned with a gun his gun, and we weren't allowed to pack a sidearm of any kind. The only gun, we had guns in the airplane, but when we left the airplanes, airmen weren't allowed to pack a gun with them, because if you would have went down shooting at the civilians, and some people were shot down over Germany, they would have shot the next plane shot down later, but you weren't permitted to pack. The only person on the plane that had a sidearm of any kind was the bombardier, who had a sidearm to destroy here I am mixed up, this bomb sight. But he wasn't supposed to take that with him.
So how long were you a prisoner for?
I was a prisoner from 20 months, from September of 43 to May of 45.
So what was the most difficult part of being a prisoner that you remember? Did they treat you good or bad, or what did they do?
Well, the worst time was the beginning. They put us on boxcars, the 40 and 8s. And the 40 and 8 is a boxcar that was supposed to haul 40 men or 8 horses, but they put approximately 70 men in them and locked you in the boxcar and traveled about 300 miles from Munich, Germany to Krebs, Austria, and they would only let you out at the most twice a day, and sometimes you would only get out of that boxcar. And so that was the worst time of any time. And then the last month of the war was a bad time, when you knew the war was over and the Germans didn't have any facilities to take care of you. And they put us on a forced march the last month.
Did you lose a lot of men? Did they die during that time, or?
No, as far as any reports I ever got, we only lost 2 men by natural death of 4,000, and 2 men got killed trying to escape. And they left the bodies away in the compound for 3 or 4 days, and that's where they had the roll call, right where the bodies lay, to warn you if you tried to escape what would be your results.
What did you do during the days? Did they feed you well? Did you exercise? I mean, did you work? What did you do?
No, didn't work, and we exercised on our own. We done a lot of walking. A sergeant under the Geneva Convention's only supposed to, they supply your quarters and you're supposed to keep them up, and you don't have to work, corporals and privates. Privates are supposed to work and the corporals to supervise. But the conditions in the barracks were fair. We had different, we played a lot of cards when you could get a deck of cards, but of course, to begin with, cards and cigarettes were both very scarce. But after we'd been there for a while, the Red Cross and Salvation Army, we got Red Cross parcels, and Salvation Army brought us in material for entertainment. And after we were there in Stalag 17 for a few months, it kept getting better. And the first year was fair, but you never had enough food. At different times, the Red Cross parcels, if you'd have got one every week, you would have lived good with what the food the Germans supplied you, the Rudy Bakers and the dark bread. But if you didn't get a Red Cross parcel, the pickings were slim, but we've survived, and it's surprising how well you can keep yourself occupied. You played cards, if you had a deck of cards, and poker was not a success because you didn't have nothing but a few cigarettes to play for, and the guy that had cigarettes didn't want to part with his. He wanted to trade them to the German guards, and bridge was the most popular card game. I still play bridge today. I hadn't played bridge for 60 years, but I play in a bridge club now and quite successful.
So, to me, being a prisoner of anything, locked up or a prisoner of war, that'd be a terrible thing. How did you mentally get through that? Did you talk about home? What kept your spirits up?
Oh, you had all kinds of arguments in the prison camp. Everybody brought up subjects, and we had radios, and we'd get German newspapers, and some of the boys could read the German newspapers, and we a third of the men in our camp were radio men on the airplanes, and so we got crystal radios, but trading with the German guards. You say, how could you trade? But we did have cigarettes, and people were willing to sacrifice the cigarettes to trade with the Germans to get, and the guards were older men. You didn't want to force yourself on them, but you could communicate. The fellows that could speak German could communicate with them, and we knew what was going on in the outside world. The most of the time we were lacking enough food, but you got bored, but you'd have good arguments, and some guys could argue better with anything. And after the argument was over, you had one guy that would say, well, now let's start the argument and I'll take the other side, and I can win the debate from the other side. And that was true. He was a good debater.
Did you guys wonder when the war was going to end and talk about going home, what you're going to do when you get home?
Well, you always thought the war was going to be over in 6 months from day one, because we thought we was winning the air war at that time, and we knew with what we was getting, the communications was winning them. Italy and the Russians were winning. At this time in when we got into 1944, the Russians turned the war around in Russia and was advancing from that way. And we always had a positive attitude in that prison camp. There was all sergeants in that camp, American sergeants, from buck sergeants to, there was a few master sergeants, not too many, because our air crew was composed of staff and tech sergeants. But you always had a positive attitude. Everybody looked on it, even though you was hungry and cold and bored, you still kept on being positive thinking. Most everybody had a good attitude. And of course, you'd get, every once in a while, there'd be an argument, very few fights, the verbal fights mostly, but not very many
Did you ever see that program called Hogan's Heroes?
Yes, and we had a fellow in our in our Stalag that wrote the story of 17B about the prison camp. He wrote it and got it on Broadway to begin with, and had a movie made it with William Holden, which was a very good movie and won all kinds of awards. And it's still shown on television. Every so often you'll see a 17B that's going to be showed on television. And I never met the fellow that wrote it, but he got producers to produce that show here in the United States and was very successful.
So tell me about when you were liberated. Tell me who came, what happened in May of 45.
Well, we had been put on a forced march in late March or early April because the Russians were only a few hundred miles away from our camp and the first big city to the east of us was Vienna, and so they put us on a forced march, and they moved us west towards the Americans and the British, and we were ended up about 3 or 4 weeks later in the woods, all of us, and then the German guards were there, but they had no authority over us, and we debated among ourselves whether to go out on our own, but we stayed with the group and went into the woods, built lean-tos out of the trees in the woods, and made a home. The Americans didn't know we were there. We were on the river. We could hear the American tanks running up and down the road on the other side, but had no way of getting communication. And one day, a few days, it was a colonel come through on a Jeep. He was American, and he looked at us, the guys that were on the road, because we were every place in that area. Who the hell are you guys? And we told him we were, and he didn't know anything about Stalag 17B, but he knew we were Americans. He could tell by our actions. And he says, well, I'm going to leave, and I'll send somebody else over to help you fellas, because the Germans, and he broke the one German guard that he found there, he broke his gun and says, you're American soldiers, but we still weren't American soldiers because we didn't know what to do with ourselves. But we knew there was going to be help through. And then about 2 days later, there was some Jeeps and tanks come down the roads, and now here's a general in this group, and I don't know who the general was, but he turned to the colonel and he says, I'll give you 24 hours to get these gentlemen out of here. And he come back the next day with orders. He says, we don't have enough trucks to move you fellas, but we got a factory down the road 30 miles, and we're going to have food there. Start the march, and if you can't make it, there'll be somebody along to pick you up, but you'll get to that factory, there'll be plenty of food. And that was about week classes. Our holiday is May the 1st, is when we were liberated.
How many of you were there? Hundreds? Thousands?
There was 4,000. There was 3,000 transferred into that camp originally in October of 43. And in March of 44, they brought another 1,000 Americans in. And there was 4,000 Americans there, plus English, Russians, and French. The French run the hospital at Stalag 17. And of course, we didn't mingle any with the other nationalities. We were on our own and separated in the camp from the other. There was Russians in that camp. The Russians were abused quite severely.
Did your family back home receive notice that you were missing in action?
Yes, my mother, within a week after I was shot down, received a missing in action. And then about 2 months later, she received word that I was a prisoner of war.
How did she find that out?
Well, she a gentleman by the name of John Mistrell. We lived out in the country, and he delivered this for the telegrams out to the people. That was a bad job, and he knew of my family, and he got all my family home before they come and told my mother that I was even missing or a prisoner of war. Both times he got my family to come out, and they talked to my dad and told him, and then when he came in and delivered the telegram. And when I come home, gasoline was rationed. And my mother said, "You've got a phone call from John Mistrell." He went, and I says, "Who's John Mistrell?" He runs the gasoline bulk station. Gasoline was rationed. He gave me a whole sheet of coupons to buy gas that summer, and I had plenty of gas. I was the only fellow in the country that had all kinds of gas because he was a distributor, and I suppose he had a few extra coupons, and of all the fellows that come home, he give them a few coupons according to how long you was going to be home, how much gas, and of course.
Wasn't that hard on your family, though, to wait and not know what happened to you?
Oh, evidently, it was hard on them. My mother had just been in the hospital for an operation, but they survived it, and it was hard on her when I come home. Of course, I got home I didn't get home till sometime late May or June in '45, but that was the most beautiful day when I come home. I come home on a bus from Columbus to Denison, and made it to my sister's, and then got out to my farm home out in the country at Tippecanoe, Ohio.
So when you got home, did you find yourself home, lying on your bed, thinking what just you'd been through? Or, I mean, that's a tremendous thing that you went through.
Oh, yes. That it was so much going on. I had so many visitors come to the house. The next weeks I was home, I had a 60-day furlough. And people just kept every car, I think, that came down the road stopped because they'd consoled my mother and dad over the years that I'd been missing or been a prisoner of war. And people come in, people that I didn't know from far and wide stopped to see me them few days I was home that summer. And of course, when I was home, the Japanese War ended then.
Were you with your whole crew in that Stalag, or were you separated from them?
No, I was separated from them at Frankfurt because I was wounded, and I went to what they called the hospital there for a few weeks while my foot healed. It was not the Germans. I'll give them credit. They did X-ray that foot, and they said it wasn't broken. It was just a bad crack. They said, and it was never set, never in the cast. But after a few weeks, I was able to walk on it. And so I was separated from the rest of my crew from then on. I met them once I got to Stalag 17. I met the rest of my crew. They would come to my barracks, and I would go to their barracks at different times.
Did you stay in touch after the war?
Not very well. I always thought it was the officers' place to get us back together. So we really never met as a crew. I met the pilot's family. I've communicated a little bit with some of the other ones. Our radio man died a year after he came home from the prison camp. That was a tragic when we got that message. He had went through the prison camp ordeal and then to die. And never did hear the circumstance of his death.
Do you think you're the only one left alive from that crew?
Yeah, I know that I'm the only one from the bomb group. I'm the only one left alive from
Were
that
there
group.
10 of you or 9 of you?
There were 10 of us. Was 10 on the plane.
You know, yesterday was Veterans Day, and we spoke at schools here, and we talked to the kids about freedom. And I don't think our kids today realize what freedom is. You were deprived of your freedom, you know. Let me ask you, what does freedom mean to you?
Well, freedom means to be able to do as you want to do and move wherever you want to go and have the right to express your opinion about and being able to discuss it with your fellow men. And I know the children don't realize they have freedom, but they don't realize how valuable it is till they've been taken in under control by an enemy. And we were fortunate to be taken in Germany instead of Japan. The Japan prisoners suffered much more than we did.
Did the Japanese not follow the Geneva Convention?
No, they didn't. I have a friend, Bud Nguyen, who still was in Freeport, and Bud, his health is good, and he's still active. He's the greatest trader in the world. He's a collector of everything. And him and I met with him here about three months ago. Him and I had a dinner party. And I'm a member of the ex-prisoner wars in Worcester. And we're very active there. And we like to look after the widows of prisoners that have been dead 20 and 30 years. And that's one of our main things as ex-prisoners of war, to look after these widows of the prisoners that have died.
What does the American flag mean to you?
Oh, I salute it every time I walk by it.
You can take a drink if you want.
Okay.
Tell me what the flag means to you.
Well, you know, it's surprising. In prison camp, somebody come up with a flag, and we had an American flag. Of course, we had to keep it hid from the Germans, but that come out every so often in the barracks. And I don't know where they come from, but they were there. And to look back and remember seeing the flag, I come into Lucky Strike, and of course, people say, what's Lucky Strike? Well, that was where to begin with, that was a place where the fellows in France embarked from to go out to fight, and later they reversed it, and that's where you come back to the prisoners were the first ones back there, and they used it later on for all the Americans went through Lucky Strike or the other camps in Le Havre, France. I think I'm right on that. But the flag is very important, and everybody should respect it and look up to it, because that's our symbol, and you don't, when it's taken away from you, you don't realize what it means to you till that time comes.
Do you think our country is forgetting about World War II?
Oh, I think they are, but there's a lot of people still remember, and there's still a few of us left. I understand there are about 150,000 prisoners in World War II. There's still 20,000 left. And we're still active. And I don't think the country as a whole, when the day comes down, just like what happened to Camp Hood last week, people, when it comes down to the bottom, still realize that this country is the greatest country in the world. There's no doubt about that in my mind.
Do you think it's important that our young people today learn about World War II?
Yes, and I
Tell me
think,
why you think that.
well, I think that they don't teach enough about the war, and some of the teachers don't want to do it, but it's important because in World War II, we had an objective. The objective was to wipe out the Germans, the Nazi group, and the Japanese. That was the ultimate. And there was no doubt in our minds that we was going to win the war from day one. Maybe we were too positive thinking, but we had the will and the people here in the United States to do it. The women all went to work, and the men went to the factories. We closed down in 1940. There's no cars made in 1944. 1943 and 1944, there was no American cars made to sell to the public because everything was for the war. And you realize that now, that this country produced enough material during them years. They produced enough to supply all the English and what French forces. We supplied the whole world at that time. The Russians, our factories in this country supplied the whole world with equipment to fight that war. There was 12,000 B-17s built, approximately, and 6,000 of those were lost over Germany. You think that was 60,000 men lost over Germany in those planes, 10 men at a time.
Ed, what do you think our country should remember about World War II?
Well, the fact that the Germans and the Japs were going to take the world over. That was their ultimate. The German goal, Hitler's goal, was to take the world over and rule it as one world and under his jurisdiction, and everybody would have been a slave, and he was going to kill certain nationalities. He was going to wipe out them. And the Americans come to the aid and ruled and let them people become free people, not slaves of the world. We made more free people than any other country in the world because the American ultimate was for the people all over the world.
What were your thoughts about Hitler back during the war?
Oh, we thought he was an awful fella. And as I remembered going back, and the ultimate was to see him destroyed and his reign destroyed. And there was no doubt in our minds that it could be done, and which we proved it could be.
Did you have any knowledge of the concentration camps and what was going on?
No. When we were on the forced march, there's a fellow from Canton wrote an essay about that. We didn't realize what it was. We seen these people along the road as we were on the march through someplace in Austria. I don't know what city it was that we were going through. We seen these people, and they were worse looking people and the worst people in our camp, the prison camp, were the Russians that had little pot bellies. But here, these people were, you see them straggling along, and we didn't realize at the time. But, and I can't think of that fellow's name in Canton that wrote that little essay about this fella. And it's been in our P.O.W. magazine more than one time. And he wrote that. He was a prisoner the same as I was. And as we come by there, he's seen one of these people die. But of course, the guards were on us, and they kept us moving through that area. Why they left us go by that, camp, I don't know, but we did go, and we didn't realize at the time what it was. And of course, then it was later, we learned about the concentration camps.
Maybe they were on their death marches. They called them death marches.
Yeah, well, there was a camp there someplace, and I don't know just where the was, although there's been articles on a magazine about that.
I wonder if it was Mauthausen or one of those camps.
Well, it was someplace in Austria.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Tell me about being elected to the Ohio Hall of Fame. Is that what it is, a Hall of Fame?
The Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame, yes.
Tell me about that award, or what happened with that.
Well, I was sitting in my apartment, and one day and the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was a girl by the name of Karen Keish calling me.
Uh-huh.
And she had just been to and I had just got out of the hospital, and she had been to the ex-prisoner of war state convention, and she was going to announce that I would been elected to the Veterans Hall of Fame here in Ohio. And she called me to tell me, and I didn't even know that my name had been nominated. It was quite an honor. My friend Dave Dilley put my name in and nominated me for this high honor in the state of Ohio. It's all the ex-presidents, all the astronauts are in this. And I'm the 287th one.
Is that what's around your neck there?
Yeah, this is the medallion that I received at this, and I have a plaque that you are holding.
Yes. Did Governor Strickland give this to you?
Yeah, Governor Strickland gave us. So it was 20 received this. There was 120 nominated for this honor, and there was 20 selected from the state of Ohio. And I'm the first one to receive it from Coshocton County.
Great.
As I said, all the presidents are in, and all the astronauts, and Clark Gable and Jimmy Stewart. Clark Gable flew missions over Germany the same as I did, in a B-17 or B-24.
Didn't Jimmy Stewart, did he do that too or not?
Yes, Jimmy Stewart was a test pilot, not a test pilot, an instructor pilot in Boise, Idaho when I was there. I met him in Boise, Idaho back in 1943. He was an instructor pilot, and that was a dangerous job in Boise, Idaho, because you took 19, 20, 21-year-old boys and took them off of Piper Cubs and put them in B-17s as pilots, and they come bouncing in. But Jimmy Stewart hung in there and taught them to fly the B-17.
Are you proud that you're a World War II veteran, Ed?
Oh, very proud. I still serve on the Honor Guard in Coshocton County. We have one member, a fellow named of George Leach in Coshocton County, that has served at 1,000 military funerals in Coshocton County. It don't matter what he's doing, if there's a funeral, George will be at that funeral.
What does Veterans Day mean to you?
Oh, that's Veterans Day and Memorial Day are two most important holidays in my life. I spoke at Coshocton yesterday. They had asked me to speak before, and I told them no, that I didn't think, but I made up my mind after I got this Hall of Fame recognition that I would speak when they asked me. Good. And I spoke. I'm not a good public speaker, but I spoke, and everybody said I'd done a good job. I'm proud of that. And we probably had 500 people at Coshocton yesterday.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. At the end of my interviews, I always ask the veterans to give me a salute into the camera. When I ask you from where you're seated for the camera, could you do that for me, sir?
You want me to sit still and do it?
Because I've got the camera on you right
Okay.
now. Just give me a second to turn this into you. Okay. I want you to look right into the camera and go ahead and give me a salute, sir. Great. Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for your service.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Did you bring any pictures of yourself?
He did. He brought a book along.
Yeah.
Scanned.
Perfect.
I got a book on.
throughout the day. Then I have a thumb drive.
Yeah, and I'd like to give you that book. I forgot. I only brought 2 books.
That's fine. I'm gonna.
That's the fifth or sixth publication. I only